Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Restaurant. Joined with me today is Jonathan Chilia. Today we've got a really special guest later on for a short interview, Samantha Paj-Gazan. She's the new Commissioner for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so stay tuned. Today our headlines are as follows. 5 arrested in anti-terrorist operation after abducting man. Prime Minister will not open public inquiry into Miriam Parch's death. Loa's enormous 19th century naval reservoir revealed, Melvin Thomas' return to the stand delayed, and a popular St. Julian's Restaurant closes down as owner flags rent problems. John, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, yesterday, we saw the end of days of investigation by the anti-terrorism squad, which led to the arrest of 5 men over the abduction of 1 man. 4 of these 5 men are of Syrian nationality, the 5th one is Libyan, and the victim is also Syrian. Now, details are still scarce on the ground as to what led to this abduction and, whether the person was harmed in question, but it is believed that the man was abducted over political differences stemming from Syria. Now, obviously, Syria is a country still trying to get over years of war, infighting, rebellions as well, so it seems that something domestic has spilled over to Malta and led to the abduction of the man. The 5 men will be charged in court today, so we'll definitely have to see where this develops, but it's a bit of a shocking story, isn't it, Julian? I don't think a lot of people were expecting to see this in Malta.
Yeah, no, quite a shocking story, and I think it sort of brings renewed focus, as you suggested, of these issues that are outside the country becoming a domestic problem, right? And when, lack of integration and stuff, where these issues are not head on, they can sort of maybe flare up. But positive to see the police actually taking action, and solving this case for now. We'll see obviously what happens in court later on today. On to our next story. Malta's Prime Minister, Robert Abela, has said he will not open a public inquiry into the death of Miriam Parch. For those of you who don't remember, Miriam Parch is the mother of 2 who died when her home that neighbours a construction site collapsed on top of her. So far, 4 people have been charged, including the architect, STO and contractor. Now obviously things, it's been a year and things have slowly been developing, but Miriam Parch's family is still calling for the introduction of a public inquiry. This comes especially after a report of experts into the construction industry found that, essentially the sector is playing Russian roulette with people's lives. Reforms are being introduced. Still, Parch's family and their lawyers, for that matter, argue that transparency is key, and a public inquiry is the only place where, the institutions and whether they failed, can go on trial. So the Prime Minister yesterday was approached to sort of see his feedback, and he remained resolute, saying there's no need for a public inquiry while criminal proceedings are underway. He actually even, made his point even stronger by sort of saying, these people are arrested, so clearly the institutions are working. So really, there's no need for a public inquiry. He's on record to be hesitant at the ideas of public inquiry. He's also staunchly against the one involving Daphne Caruana Galizia. So we'll see how it develops. I don't know what you think about the whole issue.
I have a lot of admiration for the Parch family, especially for Miriam Parch's widower. The second of every single month since her death, he's taken to Facebook with a massive emotional post to remind us all of what it really means to lose someone to the construction industry. When it comes to the report itself, I think it's really important to note what the family's lawyers actually said in regards to the report. They said, quote, "The report confirms that the institutions have blatantly failed their obligation to protect the lives of people." I mean, I think that kind of says it all, Julian, doesn't it? Moving on to the next story, and this is something that, we often hear about how beautiful Malta is naturally, but, we might not realize what stunning beauty we have, even man-made, right under the ground. So some new images have shown us the Loa Naval Reservoir. So this is a reservoir that is over 100 years old. It's beautiful, it's stunning. The light in there is actually incredible. This area holds up to 10 million gallons of water, and it's being cleaned up and it's being maintained right now. And some Maltese photographers, including leading Maltese photographer Daniel Chilia, took some stunning images which you can find on Lovin Malta. Chilia himself, he spoke about the reservoir and he said, quote, "Malta and Gozo never cease to amaze me." I didn't even know about this reservoir. I was totally unaware of it. It's massive. It's really a beautiful thing to see in Malta, and hopefully we start seeing a little bit more of it.
Yeah, no, I was super shocked to see it. I mean, I've been to Leah so many times and I had no idea there was this huge reservoir right underneath the ground. I mean, there was this amazing photo just to show you the sheer size of, this huge walls and this small, tiny man next to it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully they invite us on a press tour. I'm dying to go. So hit me up if possible. On to our next story. It involves Melvin Thomas' anticipated return to the stand was delayed after lawyers of two men charged with murdering Daphne Caruana Galizia insisted that they will not cross-examine Melvin Thomas until recordings are heard in court. So the recordings they're referring to are the ones Melvin Thomas took of Jorgen Fenech. They include intimate details, about how they maybe planned the murder, things like, information that was leaked. They're quite sensitive, findings. Alfred and Georgia are demanding that they get played in their sitting. This so far has been rejected by the magistrate, who's sort of going on Keith Arnold's assertion that within these recordings, there's nothing relevant to the case itself. I don't personally agree, because at the end of the day, whether you're Vince Muscat, George Georgia, Alfred Georgia, any person, you should have access to any evidence that may exonerate or prosecute you should always be granted access. We'll see how this is going to develop. On Melvin Thomas himself, so those of you who may not know, Melvin Thomas hasn't been in court since July 2020, since a suspected attempted suicide where he slit his own throat, he stabbed himself in the stomach, slit his wrist, really, really graphic stuff. But I mean, at least from a third-party view, just seeing him in court, he seemed to be in good health,
yes.
Right? He was walking well, I've heard that there are slight problems with his voice, but nothing too major. A psychiatric has evaluated him and deemed him mentally fit to testify. There are other details which we can't reveal just yet because of a court order. But, at least now we're going to start seeing, who is, at the end of the day, the middleman, the star state witness in the trial, appear in court once again. Since then, there have been quite a lot of revelations. I don't know what to think about it.
It's a little bit frustrating to hear, that a court sitting is put off again and again. But let's be very clear, this is a super serious case. It's a major case. It's going to have massive repercussions for years to come in Malta. The next sitting is set for the 3rd of February, so let's see if we stick to that, but that's the date we're looking at next, so definitely stay tuned for development on that. Moving on to the final story of the day. This is something that I think is affecting many businesses, bars, restaurants around Malta, and now we're seeing it come to full effect. So a very popular St. Julian's Restaurant bar, La Plage, has had to close down its doors for good after it couldn't afford its rent anymore. Apparently, the owners took to social media. They had a very emotional video, and they said that their landlord had refused to lower their rent, leading them, unable to pay their employees, to make or break even every single month. They uploaded a video which showed them gutting the place, taking the sign down, removing all the tables and stuff. It was very emotional, and they said themselves, this comes with much difficulty and disbelief. So they were kind of not even expecting it themselves. I have a feeling that this is something that's happening across the board in Malta and Gozo. This restaurant is a popular one in St. Julian, so they probably had a lot of limelight on it. A lot of people saw about it and saw the video as well. But, my heart definitely goes out to all these businesses who are really, this isn't the first month of the pandemic anymore. It's nearly a year on. The first few months, there was a lot of solidarity. I felt like a lot of landlords and authorities were finding ways to make ends meet. But nearly a year on, and it seems like things are returning back to normal, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does seem like that goodwill has finished, but our tourism sector is crucially important, and it's vital that we keep, this industry afloat. I sort of saw it somewhat ironic, that this story came out yesterday. It was the same day that the government released a 10-year tourism strategy for a post-COVID-19 world. Now that covered crucial things, like carbon neutrality, environmental protection, employing modern technology, and even just to create, a better quality of tourism in Malta. However, with the way the pandemic is going, there doesn't seem really to be so much of an end in sight, and it will take quite a while, for the tourism industry to recover. there just might not be a tourism industry to go back to, you know. So as much as there are wage supplements and stuff, you know, we need to start doing more, particularly more when it comes to crucial industries like tourism. That's it from us for now. Just a reminder, in a couple of minutes, there's going to be Samantha Parch-Gazan, the new commissioner for the rights of persons with disabilities. It's going to be a really, really illuminating stuff. Before then, here's a short clip.
Buongiorno Daniele. Buongiorno. 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 Tikfix Stephen, eh? Kemm tajt injections ħajtek, Steve?
Tajt. Anki inti kontati?
Krom daħħal tabar fin-nies.
Illum aħna jmiss.
Illum daħlu f'tagħna.
Tingiza.
Aswa xej fil-fatt.
Le. U mhix kiesħa. Laħaqtu ġibtu għarum templiċe.
Prosit.
Prosit. Thank you.
Welcome.
Warm hands.
Prosit.
Very good.
Ready. Għandek il-rekord ta' fil-qima.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Grazie.
Keep up the good work.
Prosit. Grazie. Steve. Prosit. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
So that was just a clip of Health Minister Chris Fearn receiving the vaccination this morning. We've just got the video in. And now turning to today's interview, Samantha Parch-Gazan, the new Commissioner for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's nice being here, thank you.
So, you know, we wanted to speak to you a little bit because, you know, you're young, you have quite an interesting history, and now you've been put into this role, a very important role, just the second person ever to have the role. So, you know, you're 27 years old. You've been involved in everything from the Girl Guides to National Youth Councils to activism. You know, were you expecting to be given this role?
No, not at all. First of all, to be Commissioner of Persons with Disability, you need to have a disability yourself. So I acquired my disability very recently. Although I have been active in the field through my research, through my studies and my work as well previously, and also through my activism, as you were mentioning. And even through Girl Guides and even through the National Youth Council and my different forms of activism, I always focused on minority groups. I recall one time I was in a European conference for young people, and I was really emphasizing through our dialogue there that we need to make sure that whatever we're working on is accessible, and accessible in different forms. So even if we're talking about information needs to be accessible as well. Oh, yeah.
So it's quite a new role. Obviously, your predecessor, Oliver Scicluna, was the first ever. So, you know, you were just appointed literally last week. But kind of, what's your vision for this role?
Okay. First of all, I have to say that Oliver did an amazing job, and people remind me of that as well. I hope I'll be as good, half as good at least, of what he did. So yeah, with regards to my vision, I want to promote mainstreaming further, in the sense that although it's important to have a strong sector of disability, we also need to ensure that other people working in different sectors recognize and value persons with disability and prioritize them when they're working on designs. Again, whether it is physical infrastructure or whether it is information, we need to make it accessible. And we make it accessible to people who may have challenges to get to that information or get to that street or whatever. We have to understand the concept of universal design, because when we have universal design in all the different spheres, we then allow people who wouldn't have any challenges to have access nonetheless, but persons with disabilities would have access to that. So yeah, that would be one of my priorities and one of my visions.
No, that sounds brilliant. I feel like, though, is this something maybe too new for Malta? Or do you think now in 2021 we've reached a point where, you know, these are something that the society at large will understand?
I think To be honest, I think it's new to the world. You know, I was watching a documentary this weekend, Crip Camp. I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch. And its context is in the 1970s in America. And we're still talking about similar issues across the world, not just in Malta. So we have this globalized world, this globalized society, and yet people with disabilities are still being left out. So yeah, there's still a lot going there.
So on that topic, what are some of the main issues, we're facing in Malta in this realm?
At the moment, rather than going and delving in the issues, which I will be doing through my communication and dialogue with stakeholders, because I believe that although I have a personal experience and I also have experience as a family member, my reality is different from that of other persons with disabilities. So first, instead of being front and forward and saying these are my priorities and this is what I'll stick to, I want to listen to stakeholders, so prioritizing persons with disabilities first and foremost, their family members and NGOs involved in the sector, and also other stakeholders such as service providers as well, and even government policymakers, who ultimately are somehow facing some form of barrier themselves to implement and integrate persons with disabilities, whether it's lack of awareness, whether it's fear, because we don't know how to handle these people. So yeah,
that's really, really good. So, looking into your background a little bit, something that really jumped out to me is that you were part of a group that actually researched the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on persons with disabilities. What did you find?
Well, there were a lot of findings, some which were kind of mainstream and related to other challenges that people in general faced. So if we're talking about anxiety, for instance, and problems with regards to work. So, but then if you have someone who has a disability, who has a mental health issue, for instance, then their anxiety is amplified, and their condition is amplified as well. So because they're scared of losing their job, and obviously it's harder to find a job when you have such conditions. But also because obviously the condition itself might bring out such feelings. There's also obviously when it comes out to, for instance, persons with autism who enjoy having a routine and a more structure, or even persons with challenging behavior who are put in kind of in a routine which makes them feel comfortable. This was obviously challenged, and there was a lot of difficulties there as well. So yeah.
I think that's really important work because among all the challenges the island's facing, that might not be the first that people think about.
Exactly.
So it's really important that we're looking into
One
this.
of my concerns, for instance, with regards to disability and the pandemic is also education, because people with disabilities are kind of made to learn online, for instance, but that's also a challenge, and not everyone is able to follow online sessions. Sometimes it's even challenging to follow lessons in class. I mean, I experienced that. I'm sure everyone did.
Definitely.
So. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this is a bit of a hot discussion over the last few weeks, especially following the Christmas season, is in Malta there's many fundraisers such as Estrina and many others, and they do a lot of good, but many people criticize them for tokenizing people with disabilities to raise funds for them. What's your view on this?
I'd go a step back and I'd say, today as commissioner, but also before I was appointed this role, I think persons with disabilities should enjoy rights like everyone else. So charities have a place in society, because we cannot deny that. However, I prefer that people have rights, and that's what I will be working for.
Finally, to any families or people with disabilities who are watching this right now, like we said, very, very early days, but what's your message to them, moving forward, taking on this role? Only the second person ever, the first female to take on the role. Do you have a message for these people as well as their families?
Well, first, that I'm open for dialogue, as I mentioned, and also that I would like to see less fragmentation in the sector, because I believe that there has been a lot of different organizations pulling strings from different ends. I think as a sector we have to come together and realize that we have more power when we're together. So yeah, that would be my message.
Thank you so much, Samantha Pachkasan, for being with us today. And everyone watching from home, have a day full of lovin'.